Welcome back, dear traders. A flood of news will trigger high volatility during the New York session today. Some news may reinforce the negative sentiment, while other news may revive the risk-on mood. InstaForex experts are ready to share their analysis and forecasts. Market sentiment went through abrupt changes yesterday. Despite positive macroeconomic data for stocks, Wall Street slipped into risk aversion by the closing bell. Shock remarks by Fed policymakers pushed the benchmark indexes down. As a result of a massive sell-offs of risky assets, the doom and gloom settled on the stock market. The Dow Jones incurred the heaviest losses. The index tumbled by 613 points or 1.8%, and the Nasdaq lost 1.2%. The S&P 500 sank by 1.5% to close at 3,920 points. The three indexes traded in the red in the New York pre-market, promising another day of sell-offs. The S&P 500 is expected to trade in the intraday corridor between 3,810 and 3,990 points. The Nasdaq halted an 8-day winning streak and closed with losses. The S&P 500 and the Dow Jones closed with the steepest intraday fall since December 15. The weakest sectors were the retail sector, which dropped by 2.7%, and the utility sector, which shed 2.4%. None of the sectors in the S&P 500 showed gains. Yesterday, investors found out that the U.S. retail sales, factory inflation, and industrial production declined in December steeper than expected. Fed President James Bullard and Loretta Mester acknowledged the common trend of a slowdown in inflation, but they advocated for a further rate increase to 5% or even higher. Investors had a hope that the U.S. Fed could revise its hawkish policy and decrease interest rates. In practice, the regulator will hardly venture into such moves this year. This conclusion can be made following remarks of the Fed policymakers. As for corporate news, Moderna shares rose by 3.3% in light of the report proving the efficiency of its vaccine for the respiratory virus. Microsoft shares fell after the statement that the company would fire 10,000 employees, and Tesla shares tumbled by 2% in the pre-market today. Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft also made losses. Today, the market found out that Amazon would make redundant its employees in the United States, Canada, and Costa Rica, according to its plan to fire 18,000 people. Such layoffs will affect almost 6% of Amazon's employees. When it comes to the economic calendar, investors are absorbing U.S. building permits for December, a weekly update on unemployment claims, and the industrial survey by the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia for January. The report on the building permits proves that the U.S. housing market is cooling down. The number of building permits fell in December by 1.6% from a month ago to 1.33 million, less than the forecast for 1.37 million. The latest score in the weakest since June 2020. The manufacturing index by the Philadelphia Fed climbed to minus 8.9 point in January from minus 13.7 in December, higher than the consensus for minus 11 points. More than 33% of firms reported lower activity. The employment index improved to 10.9 in January from minus 0.9 a month ago. The weekly update by the Labor Department confirms the health of the labor market. Initial jobless claims showed another weekly decline by 15,000 instead of the long-awaited growth. The number of initial claims sank to 190,000 last week, following 205,000 a week ago. The market had expected to rise to 214,000. Netflix, American Airlines, Costco, and Procter & Gamble are due to provide the earnings for their fourth quarter later today. Besides, more Fed policymakers such as Lyle Brennett, John Williams, and Susan Collins will make the comments. The currency market is trading under high volatility. Yesterday, the US dollar index tested a low of 101.5 and sharply recovered to 102.4. The greenback remains under pressure today. Its index has settled above 102, trading within the intraday corridor between 101.50 and 102.70. As expected, the weakness in the US dollar was curbed by the Fed's hawks. They sent the message about the further rate hikes despite the signs of inflation deceleration. And today, traders are alert to comments from other Fed policymakers. Their remarks are likely to support the US dollar at the comfortable levels of 102 and 103 points rather than trigger a new rally. Meanwhile, investors are analyzing economic data as the key to the disinflation puzzle. The loonie weakened by 1.3% on Wednesday. The USD CAD pair consolidated at around 1.3490 today, having edged up 0.08%. The instrument is trading within the intraday corridor between 1.3420 and 1.3540. A sharp fall in commodity prices was to blame for the Canadian dollar's weakness. The benchmark oil grades slumped by 1.5% and extending their slide today. Brent futures shed 0.4% to trade at $84.61 a barrel. WTI sank 0.9%. A lower than expected decline in the US PPI, contraction in retail sales, and a sharp drop in industrial production again sparked off fears about aggressive rate hikes. And the American Petroleum Institute reported that oil inventories expanded by almost 7.6 million barrels last week, having grown for a second week in a row. Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, said that energy markets could be tighter in 2023. Global risk aversion pushed Bitcoin down by 2.8%. The token skidded to $20,735. Altcoins traded mixed in the New York pre-market. Popular cryptocurrencies recouped early losses intraday. Optimism about the crypto market has been fragile. Despite the preconditions for the rally, the overall sentiment remains gloomy. The market recovery after the FTX crash is likely to be long. Crypto lender Genesis is getting ready to declare its bankruptcy, and the claim could be filed this week. A diversion of a digital currency group is holding confidential talks with some lenders about the liquidity crisis. Genesis owes more than $3 billion to its lenders. In this context, CoinDesk, which owns DCG, could be sold. The crypto-related news website hired Lazard as an asset manager to investigate the sale deal. Such news, accompanied by risk aversion, sets the stage for Bitcoin's fall to $18,000 or even $16,000. As for the intraday outlook, Bitcoin is trying to settle at about $20,700. If the token fails to keep this high, it will tumble to $19,800. And the alternative scenario is a flat market between $20,700 and $20,900. The most optimistic scenario is a retest of $21,200. Keep track of all markets developments on InstaForex TV channel. Make profits with the InstaForex and see you soon.